All right, everyone, welcome back for another episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. Holy cow, big reversal here in the market. Look at how they gapped this thing up, got right up to gap fill here, and got everybody on board. Oh, yeah, we're going right back to all-time highs, buy the dip. And then they just faded this thing, and we are fading hard here in the final hour. I want to show you here on the VIX, this just happened, breaking through resistance now, so it has not been able to get above 29. I gave you guys that level. 29 is the magic number, and 30 really another one, but it has made a new high now, so this could get very explosive very quickly. This is a trend line we're watching here on the VIX, and we are making a new high, a high we have not made since May. So this market is showing some fear here. I guess there's a new case of Omicron in the US. Who really cares? The market will sell when it wants to sell, and it's really kind of not related to the news a lot of the time. I think that's just cover for what's going on. But let's take a look here at the technicals. There's a lot to cover here. So overnight, we had kind of this inverse head and shoulders here, a little bit of a W bottom, something like that. That had a target of about 4650, 4640, and we got right up there, double top, and we filled the gap on the SPY. So that filled out to target, and now we are rolling that over and fading it pretty hard here. So that played out to target, and the technicals are working here, and they're fading this rally. Now, it did look like we were going to flag a little bit here. Look at the NQ. Looks like we're going to flag a little bit on the daily, and it still kind of is, but now we're making a new low. So if this pivot gets taken out on the NQ, which I do think it does, we go right back to this previous all-time high, which would coincide with the 50 moving average. And as we've been saying since last Tuesday, every time, we've been saying this for months, really, expected the NASDAQ to top out once we hit this topside trend line, and that has happened. And we called it out last Tuesday. I said, we've probably topped out for the year here, and MACD is starting to turn negative. If this crosses through here by the end of the week, it's pretty much down to 370, probably by the end of December. So that is what we're looking at here on the triple Qs. And that's why we've been picking up the QID. We're also short AMD as well, so that is paying out nicely so far. And nice month for us. We just booked a nice winning month, beating the market here on Patreon. So congrats to the members there, and AMD coming in sharply. Now we're having a bit of a role reversal here. So typically AMD and NVIDIA were really propping the semis up, right? Like, we had underperformance from the rest of the semis, but AMD and NVIDIA were propping the SMH up. But today we're seeing, some positive movement out of KLA, TSM, Micron, AMAT, list goes on. Intel, you get the idea. Well, Intel actually turning negative now, but a little bit of a role reversal here in the semis, so a little bit of distribution maybe going on in AMD and NVIDIA, and the other semis sort of getting a little bit of a bounce here. Now the big story, the fulcrum of the market right now is Apple. So Apple has been propping the market up, and I talked about this yesterday, but they're kind of using Apple to distribute. So they're distributing in Microsoft, Google, really everything. Everything has been coming back in. NVIDIA is finally coming back down. Look at Tesla today. Big reversal on Tesla. If we take a look on the intraday, look at that rollover on Tesla, getting a nice bounce here now. But they're using Apple, they're buying up Apple so that they can sell everything else, essentially. And they know that that will keep the market propped up until they are done selling. Let's talk about here. So we talked about the possibility of a flag, and that looks like it's already starting to break down, but this is not a good look on the daily here on the triple Qs. It does look like we're building a bit of a bear base here, and the same thing on the spiders. So now touching that 50 moving average there on the daily. So that'll be interesting to watch. I don't think this is the major level you want to watch on the spider. I think the 100 MA is a little bit more of a solid level, and that's because we already kind of came down and bounced a little bit, then rolled over. So maybe we get a bid off the 50 MA, and we do have this double top kind of here, the previous double top all-time high. So that is going to be support there at the 454 handle. But I think there's a good chance we push through that and get down to that 100 before a more significant bounce. Also kind of see the same thing on the Dow. So this 200 moving average is not really major to me. The 340 handle is a little bit more of a major level, right? And see all these pivots down here. I don't think that 200 is going to be super, super major support. And typically the first hit of the 200, it's usually you get a good pierce through that, because all the textbooks tell you to buy the 200, but institutions know that. Institutions know the amateurs are going to buy that there, and they typically will flush it out before it gets a bounce, and to try and stop out all of those amateurs. So I think there's a good chance we dip a little bit lower here on the Dow. This is the DIA, the diamond, and, as well as the spider here, before we get a significant bounce here in the market. But you notice this market, the character has really changed a little bit here. We were seeing fins hold up. Fins are dropping now. Look at that reversal there on XLF. JP Morgan flirting with this 200 here. Again, the 200 is minor. You also have, you make a case, there was a bit of a head and shoulder right there. Excuse me. One second. There we go. Yeah, so you had a bit of a head and shoulder right here, and that triggered. So now, that could bring it JP down to maybe 150 or so. So, we're seeing a little bit of a change in character. Look at the meme stocks. The meme stocks are rolling over. GME, AMC. Look at AMC. That's a huge dump there, down 16%. Clover has been rolling over. BlackBerry, I was liking BlackBerry for a while, but as soon as we close below this green bar low here, it's just been all negative there. Bed Bath & Beyond, lost this green bar low. You're into this pivot now. You've got this gap to fill here. So meme stocks rolling over. It's really looking like kind of a risk off type of scenario. And look at all these previous high flyers. Look at Zoom. Look how far that has come down. Peloton, Roku. Look at ARK. ARK is rolling over. DraftKings, Penn. So all these previous high flyers are really just coming back down to earth finally, and really getting the sense that there is some type of a risk off move coming in the market, as really all these mid cap high flyers are coming back in, and the small caps as well. Speaking of small caps, look at the Russell 2000 blowing through that trend line there. So you're going to have some support here. You've got this pivot low, and you've got this really long-term trend line on the monthly. So that should be some support there in the near term. Again, that would coincide with a little bit of a move lower like we talked about on the Dow, 340, and the spiders here, that 100 MA around 447, 448. So that would coincide with those levels there. But ultimately, I think the Russell gets down to that 205 handle and possibly down to 195 here on the IWM. But just pretty amazing sell-off here so far. Spiders continuing to dump here. Tesla getting a nice bounce. We'll take a look at that again later. Let's talk about, so I want to point out copper here. So this is interesting. So we got through this, if we look on the weekly here a little bit, there we go. So we got through this green bar low here a few weeks ago, test candle, passed the test. Now we're testing it again. So if we close below this green bar low, on a weekly basis, so meaning by Friday afternoon, if that closes below that, copper probably gets back down to $4 in the near term. But if it holds that, it can still advance higher. But copper rolling over pretty nicely here on the daily time frame and the weekly so far. Let's talk about crude. So crude, again, getting down to this 65 handle. You got this kind of a broadening pattern here that I've been following for a few months. And, crude down to the 65 handle. I still think ultimately, even if we get a bounce here, which is probably likely, we probably get down to that 60 handle there. We'll call it 61, 62. We see these pivots down here. That's where you're probably going here on crude. And if it gets through that, obviously, you're down to that 57.50 area. But crude rolling over. Look at nat gas. Speaking of, huge breakdown on nat gas here. So this is probably headed for $4. You got the daily 200 there. Look at all this chop in there. I think I had a fib level somewhere in there too. I'd have to do some more work on it, but that's actually pretty decent support right here. Then below that, you've got the 50-week moving average. So pretty big breakdown here on nat gas coming in off of this variant news, and off of, really the governments are trying to release reserves and so on and so forth to get the price of oil down, because they are concerned about inflation. Speaking of, let's talk about yield. So I pointed this out on Twitter last night. We just do a quick little study. Bear with me for 1 second. We're just going to compare this. I'll just pop the GLD. So we're looking at the 10-year Treasury. Look at really since September here, right around this area, end of September, you almost could see a positive correlation between gold and yields. And if this does break out, and see now up, and then both come down, and then they both come up, and now they're both pulling back. If yields break out like I think they will eventually, and I still think they're in a backing and filling kind of mode. I still think that, they can pull back a little bit more here, and there's nothing really wrong with that. I ultimately expect yields to break out. But if yields and gold break out, that would be, let's just say all hell would break loose. I mean, that would not be a good thing for the market. That would signal massive inflation. If we have gold start to get a bid eventually, and by the way, take a look at this. So you have this big inverse head and shoulders potentially on gold here, right? Shoulder, head, and then a big shoulder. Kind of have the same exact pattern on the 10-year. So, and it's close to the same time frame too. It's going back to April. So, I mean, if yields and gold start breaking out together, that would be kind of like the worst case scenario, inflation-wise. That would signal some serious panic. But just wanted to point that out. I'm not saying it does happen, but it's definitely something for us to monitor. In any case, gold kind of holding this trend line. It's still kind of, the only thing I could say for it here is that it looks like it wants to break down and sentiment is getting really bad. So that could be a contrarian indicator. If it does get back up here and it gets back above 1880, then I think it's probably on. But until then, it's still just been in a range really since March. You know, we got this low here in March. We put in this high in June, and it's really just kind of been range bound until we get clear direction. It's hard to say what gold is going to do. Silver really rolling over today too. I thought it would have some support here right at this 2275 area, but it has rolled over pretty nicely. I do have a level on platinum. It's a little bit lower right now, but again, platinum rolling over pretty nicely too, and palladium looking like it wants to flag a little bit for a potential move lower. But in any case, let's take a look here at the spider. So finally getting a bounce at that 454 handle. VIX coming back in just a little bit here. So let's see. Yeah, we are getting a bounce here. Let's take a look. We'll put in a trend line. Yep, so that's where we're bouncing. So, you know, we do, you know, there is good support here at the 50 MA, but I do still think there's a chance we pierce through that maybe tomorrow to really kind of shake out any dip buyers before it gets any more of a, you know, kind of a bounce here. But the significant thing to me today is this VIX making a new high, getting to 30. It did stall out there, but it did make a new local high and a new high going back to May. So that is not something to just brush off. It doesn't mean the market goes straight down. You know, it doesn't mean we can't get a bounce, but I do think we've topped out at least for the year here and possibly a little bit longer. But, you know, again, going back to this triple Q trend line until it proves us otherwise, you know, we just got to go with it. And Apple also rolling over as well. That was leading the market. I saw this chart multiple times actually over the last day or so about Apple. And, you know, to be fair, it looks like kind of a breakout. But, you know, by the end of the week, excuse me if we pull it back, there we go. If by the end of the week we close back below it, then, you know, we have another failed breakout. And again, that would support this risk zone here on the triple Qs that we keep going back to. But in any case, not to take up too much more of your time, come find me on Patreon, Twitter. Links are right here in the corner. Like, comment, subscribe, etc. Anyways, we'll see where this market closes, see if we get a bounce off of that 454 handle on the spider. If not, I do like those lower levels there, especially on the diamond, that 340 area. But anyways, guys, take care. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.